All right, so we'll be chatting about this with Horky and Lenot and Prince. Overall, I still stick with my recommendation that I could recommend this game probably to just about anybody who's interested in playing a horror game and being scared. I think it has definitely has a lot of flaws to me. Oh, I'd also really recommend playing this in VR. There's so many moments that you can tell were just tailor made for VR. Some are kind of like cheap tricks, but so much of it, like when I'm playing Cyberpunk, I think, oh, I get it. Like that, like Prince had mentioned many times that some moments felt so great because of the scale. Your character maybe being picked up or being thrown, things being right in your face. So I would recommend anyone try to get a PSVR. Try to just borrow a PSVR of somebody. Go to your local library and take one out. Because there were a lot of times where I felt like I was not getting the full experience. Yeah, Resident Evil 5 and 6, they decided to go a different path. Full on action. Embracing kind of the campiness. Kind of like the stupidity of the movies. I'm really not a fan of the movies. I think the movies are totally ridiculous and don't capture what made Resident Evil 1 and 2 and 4 so good. Yeah, 7 really switched it up, and I think they really needed to. I mean, Resident Evil 1 and 2 were super successful. I haven't played 3, so maybe it's just as good. They're successful because they were these cinematic horror games that we'd never really seen before, other than Alone in the Dark. And, but the characters had some personality. Jill, Chris, Wesker. No, who's the guy that says the Jill sandwich? They were like such a nice mix of kind of campy voice acting, but it fit because it kind of felt like a B movie in a way. And then in Resident Evil 4, they went for that over the shoulder, third person, not going to use tank controls. A little more action, but still like super scary and super effective. I didn't play all the way through Resident Evil 4, and I hear that its pacing gets a little kind of wonky, and there's some weird moments. But like the first half of the game was so good. And then, yeah, 5 and 6 going more action, co-op modes, and then 7 being just this strip it down, first person, get scary, embrace VR, which is great because Resident Evil 1 and 2 and 4 were all pretty groundbreaking. I mean, the graphics in Resident Evil 2 and kind of like the immersion of the city, they really embraced what was working at the time. You have a CD, that's new, okay, it's on the PlayStation, so we can have tons of voice acting. We can have cutscenes. The thing at the time was like these not pre-rendered backgrounds, some pre-rendered backgrounds, but like fixed camera angles. They looked really good, in Resident Evil 1 and 2. They didn't bring the VR functionality to the PC port. That's shitty. To me, this feels like a VR game that's been ported to non-VR. And then paved the way for Remake 2 and 3. So, yeah, it's like when this game starts you off having to approach an abandoned house and think of someone being kidnapped and kept in a cell. That kind of stuff to me is really scary because that happens. People get kidnapped way too frequently, and people are murdered, and they're sometimes never found, and are raped and tortured, and that stuff felt so scary. And then when you kind of are being hunted around and the person's not dying, that's great too because you feel really weak. And it's sort of a cat and mouse game. I think I kind of broke the pathing a bit by going after the first boss. I'm trying not to spoil as much. Too soon, because it felt like after when I went to go get a different item, there was a long section where it was way too calm. And I feel like, oh, I bet you I'm supposed to be being stalked right now. But those boss fights were super memorable and very unique, especially the one with the car. That was really well done, really unexpected, and something that kind of felt cinematic, but was actually within the gameplay that felt fantastic. Just felt like anything goes, and you're not expecting it because that part of the gameplay had never been in the game before. So to introduce that is really unexpected, because when you're playing games, you get to know the game language, you get to know what they're going to do, and you would think, oh, they're not just going to let somebody get in a car, are they? But they did, and it was great. It was pretty scary going around the house. The sound design really added to that. The window shutters banging, having to go to the different levels, the basements. But then there'd be some moments because of the backtracking where you'd get to know that this section is completely safe. Whereas the first time you'd go through that section, not knowing it's safe would be really, really scary. And I kind of wish the game was relied a bit more on building tension and suspense, as opposed to trying to just scare you with jump scares. For my liking, I think there's far too many lazy jump scares where the whole point of it is just throw something in your face. Like I've said a million times, Stories Untold is an incredibly suspenseful game that would give me chills for the entire playthrough, and you're just building and getting closer and closer, and never one jump scare. So, yeah, Lena, you're saying the opening hours are definitely the best and most memorable. Absolutely. First scene of the family at the table is, yeah, because you're caught and you're stuck and you're with these people and you're learning about them. Pretty good personalities of Lucas and the mom and the dad. Boss fights, the car fights. I really wish you didn't have to do the ship section. It felt like the game was over. I had released, and then they bring you back and make you do some sort of gameplay moments while you're just kind of avoiding monsters. The monsters felt like one of the weaker parts of it. Like they didn't know what to do to put in. They go, we got to have something, but the monsters looked kind of silly to me. They had these gigantic smiles, and when you first encounter them, it is pretty scary. You're in a scary environment, and you feel very underpowered against them, and you're sort of running a gauntlet trying to get through them. But yeah, the enemy variety suffers because they're just black things of goo. And that can work if you remain underpowered against them. But in the end, you end up being able to blow them away, and they kind of become tedious. There's that moment of, oh, I'm really powerful, and it's fun to blow their heads off with a shotgun or gun them down with a machine gun. But it just starts feeling kind of tedious. The whole ship scene, that section was so long, and I wasn't really scared during it. It was more like I was over it, you know? I was out of love. I was in a loveless marriage at that point. I was going through the motions. It's like, oh my God, I got to go to floor 3 in the basement and grab an item and back and forth, blah, blah, blah. Like, I didn't mind seeing the rest of that story and seeing that character's backstory and a bit more of it and learning it, but forcing you to do another couple hours. It's almost like they felt like they really needed to lengthen it a bit because it is kind of short. And then when that section loops around and you end up sort of back in the house anyway, it kind of feels like, did you just add that part in near the end and think, we need something more? Because now we're just right back where we started. I did really enjoy the ending a lot more than the part right before the ending. And I think that the impressions a game will leave on you are the beginning and the end. And then everything in the middle is just whatever, right? So as long as you can end strong. Definitely when people are recommending games and reviewing them, I think the ending, if they complete it, is always what's going to is always going to really shape their opinion, because so many times people recommend games, the game will be universally praised. You're playing it and people are telling you, it gets good. It gets good. Once you play for 25 hours and your brain's addicted to the gameplay loop, it's pretty good addiction. So, if you like horror games, then this is absolutely a must play. And try to get VR for sure. And then I would say, yeah, and if you're just sort of a regular gamer who doesn't mind horror games, I don't really like horror games because I'm kind of a chicken. I don't like being scared. I don't like being uncomfortable. And this felt worth playing, although I wish it was a bit shorter, and I kind of wish I just stopped playing at the ship scene or could somehow skip it because I did like the ending. So it's tough. The morality of the characters is not great. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, I guess. Yeah, okay, I won't spoil anything. But not hardly any of the characters are likable, and sort of the ending idea of your character's conclusions at the end seem pretty stupid. It doesn't really hold together all that well, but it does enough. So yeah. Leonard was saying the first house mansion part is always great in most Resident Evil games, and the secret lab overstays its welcome. Same goes for 1, 2, 3, 7. Yeah. Yeah, this is one of the where it's like it's really good in the beginning, and then like stick around if you like more campy sort of fantastical stuff, because it started feeling like a different game, you know, which I don't mind. That in the beginning it feels like more of a you've just been kidnapped by these psychotic people, and then it becomes more fantastical. Maybe they could have stretched that out a bit more. But like, oh yeah, just when you think of that house in the opening and exploring it and stuff, that was terrible. Especially when you know that something terrible is going to happen when you climb down that section, then you have to play through that again. That was a really good idea. There's some really good ideas here, and they were very bold to take Resident Evil, the franchise, in a different direction. Because there were still people that liked 5 and 6, crazily enough. So they were bold, and they had some good ideas. And they had some things that kind of missed. Yeah, very Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Too many chainsaws, especially at the end. Horky, I totally agree with you. Prince, you didn't really enjoy the beginning much, most because you don't have any weapons. Yeah, it's like, for me, it's the... that's... If it's trying to scare me, not having weapons and it being more of a hidey game, sort of like those... all those PC horror games, right? Like Amnesia and those types. Being underpowered adds to the fear. I mean, if you have a lot of weapons, then you're not really scared, right? Because you can just gun things down. So, yeah, I would recommend it. Unless you hate horror, and I'd say try to get PSVR. We'll be playing Resident Evil 8, which will be interesting to see. I'm always interested to see what are they going to learn from that, how are they going to change it. What are they up to? What did they think they need to do in the next game? And it kind of makes me want to go back to Resident Evil 2, maybe. That remake. I hear so many good things about it. That was a few people's game of the year. Just a remake, right? Bloodborne's still a horror game. We have a lot of weapons. Yeah, but Bloodborne, you're underpowered in the sense that you can easily be murdered. You're a big glass cannon, right? You actually have a lot of health in this game. You can get hit quite a bit. Especially by big bosses and chainsaws. All right. That's our thoughts on it.